The Greek Dark Ages. The world has fallen quiet. You find yourself standing among the ruins of a once great citadel. Stone scattered walls half swallowed by the earth, the air heavy with the weight of something lost. The wind sighs through the remnants of Mycenaean Tyrants and Pylos cities that once shone under the rule of warrior kings, now ghostly under the dim glow of dawn. The great palaces have burned, their painted walls once alive with images of chariots, feasts and gods lie blackened and broken. The scribes who once pressed symbols of linear B into wet clay are gone. The storerooms stand empty. The trade routes that once carried gold, tin and olive oil across the Aegean have fallen silent. This is the end of the Bronze Age. Around the year 1200 BC, the Mycenaean world collapses and Greece slips into shadow. No one knows for certain what caused it. Some whisper of foreign invaders, the mysterious sea peoples sweeping across the Mediterranean. Others speak of internal revolt of peasants rising against their kings. Perhaps it was famine, drought, or the slow unraveling of a fragile system stretched too far. Whatever the reason, the result is the same civilization flickers and fades, leaving behind only ashes and memory. You wander through villages, clinging to life amid the wreckage. Pottery is simpler now, darker, rougher to the touch. Iron tools begin to replace bronze, humbler but stronger, more practical. People live not in palaces, but in small clusters of huts, farming the land and herding animals. Writing, once the keeper of kings, disappears entirely. Without records, the voices of this age are lost. This is why we call it the Dark Ages, not because the sun stopped shining, but because history fell silent. Yet even in darkness, life endures. Around the smoky hearths, elders still tell stories. Stories of heroes who once sailed across the wine-dark sea of Troy, and the wrath of Achilles, of cunning Odysseus, and the gods who played at war with men. These tales pass from generation to generation, whispered and sung in memory of a brighter time. You listen to one such tale sung by a wandering bard, whose voice echoes through the mountains of Arcadia. His words are old, his song familiar even to strangers. In his verses live the fragment and the ravens of a vanished world, and through him the light begins to return. Slowly communities start to knit themselves together again. Villages grow larger, bound by shared kin and worship. The people begin to rebuild temples from wood and stone, dedicating them to the same gods, once honored by the Mycenaeans: Zeus, of the thunderbolt, Hera of the heart, Poseidon, who rules the sea. These are ancient names surviving the fall of kings. You can almost see them, small shrines on hilltops, smoke curling into the morning sky as farmers make offerings for good harvests. Sailors whisper prayers before setting out. The religion of the Greeks endures because it is woven into the rhythms of their daily lives. It needs no palaces to live on. Travelers cross the Aegean again, though fewer and more cautious. Contacts are timidly renewed with distant lands, Cyprus, the Levant, and the rising world of the Phoenicians. The art of metalwork revives. Simple patterns on clay grow, elegant, geometric, precise. Something is stirring in this darkness. A quiet resilience, a patient rediscovery of skill. You pause to rest by a fire in a small settlement near the ruins of Thebes. The night is cool. Children sleep beside the embers, while elders speak softly about ancestors who once ruled the world. They do not call themselves Greeks, yet only members of clans, tribes and villages scattered across rugged hills and islands, but in their language, their songs, their gods. The foundations of something new are taking shape. From this humble soil will rise a civilization unlike any other. As the centuries pass from 1100 to 800 BC, the shadows begin to thin. Villages become communities. Communities become networks. Paths between them turn into roads, and roads into trade routes. Blacksmiths craft better iron. Potters refine their clay. Farmers learn new ways to till the earth. Even their graves grow more elaborate. Not the mass burials of despair, but single tombs that speak of honor, lineage, and pride. You can almost sense a heartbeat returning to the land. The people begin to look outward again. Across the sea to Ionia, small settlements bloom along the coast of Asia Minor. Their contact with the East brings new ideas, craftsmanship, artistry, perhaps even fragments of lost knowledge from the great civilizations beyond. And still the poets sing. The oral traditions that began as flickers in the dark grow into blazing fires of imagination. They shape a shared past, a heroic age that binds scattered tribes into one cultural memory. These stories will become the backbone of Greek identity. They will inspire courage, teach virtue, and preserve the sense that even in ruin, greatness can be remembered. In time, one poet will gather these ancient songs into verse so vast, so powerful, that it will awaken an entire civilization from sleep. His name will be Homer, but that is still far ahead, waiting in the mists of the next age. For now you linger in the quiet turning of the world. The stars wheel overhead, the same stars that shone over the Mycenaean kings. The same that will watch over Pericles and Alexander. Beneath them people begin again, planting, forging, singing, building. Civilization has fallen, yes, but it has not died. In this darkness, the Greeks are learning to live without kings, to depend on their communities, to shape their destinies with their own hands. They do not yet know it, but in their humility and endurance lies the seed of the future, a future of philosophy, art, and democracy. The torch of history has not been extinguished, it has only been passed into gentler hands waiting for dawn. And as you close your eyes, you can almost hear the faint hum of that dawn approaching, the slow return of the light over the hills of a land that will one day be called Hellas. The age of heroes, remembered. You awaken to the sound of a lyre. Its notes rise and fall, like the waves upon the Aegean, a rhythm older than any temple, older even than the written word. The firelight dances on the singer's face, his eyes fixed on something far away, something half remembered. Around him sit shepherds, warriors and wanderers, drawn in by the spell of his song. You lean closer. He begins to speak of a golden time when gods walked among men, when kings fought not for plunder but for glory, and when the very sea itself seemed alive with purpose. His voice trembles with the name of Achilles, swift-footed, untamed, shining in his bronze armor. He sings of Hector, prince of Troy, noble and doomed, of Odysseus, the man of twists and turns, of Helen, whose beauty set the world aflame. These are not just stories. They are memory clothed in myth. You can almost see the shadows of the Mycenaean world flickering behind them, the high-walled citadels, the chariots that thundered across the plain, the long ships cutting through wine-dark seas. In the dark ages, when writing was lost and history turned to silence, only memory remained, and from that memory came Homer. Perhaps he was one man, perhaps many, no one knows, but his words passed from mouth to ear, generation to generation, became the bridge between the vanished Bronze Age and the dawn of Greek civilization. The people who listen to these songs are not kings anymore. They are farmers and sailors, blacksmiths and herdsmen. Yet when they hear of Troy, of bravery and betrayal, something stirs in them pride, longing the faint echo of destiny. Through these tales they begin to believe again in a shared past. And that is the miracle of the Age of Heroes. It gave the Greeks a story of who they were, long before they had nations or city walls. You watch as the bard sings beneath a sky spangled with stars. He knows the story by heart, thousands of lines of verse, each one carried in his memory. The rhythm of the lyre keeps him steady, the pattern of repetition guides him. His song is alive, reshaping itself with every telling. Some nights he dwells on the wrath of Achilles, other nights on the cunning of Odysseus. He changes the words to fit the mood of his audience, but the heart of the story never fades. In that fluidity lies the secret of Greek resilience, the power to remember by reinventing. And as you listen, you realize something extraordinary. These poems are not only stories of the past, they are lessons for the present. The Greeks will come to see in them the essence of arete excellence, the pursuit of virtue and honor, even in the face of death. When the bard sings of Hector facing Achilles, he is teaching courage. When he sings of Odysseus resisting temptation, he is teaching endurance. When he sings of hubris pride that offends the gods, he is warning of the dangers of ambition. These lessons will shape Greek thought for centuries to come. The fire crackles, the bard pauses, takes a sip of watered wine, and looks out across the gathering. In his audience are children who will one day fight for their city-states, elders who will sit in council, women who will tend hearts and pray to the gods. To all of them, the tales of Homer are more than entertainment. They were a moral compass, a shared foundation in a fractured land. You travel across Greece and find these songs everywhere. On the islands of the Aegean, sailors recite verses to steady their nerves against the storm. In the hills of Arcadia, shepherds hum fragments as they watch over their flocks. In the markets of Euboea and Corinth, wandering poets compete to perform the most stirring rendition. And gradually, out of the scattered performances, a culture of storytelling blooms. From this tradition will rise not only epic poetry, but drama, philosophy, and history itself. The Greeks will never again let their past slip into silence. Still at this time, around the 9th century, BC Greece remains divided. Each community lives according to its own customs, bound by blood and memory, but separated by mountain and sea. Yet all speak the same tongue, and all honor the same god sung of in the epics. This unity of spirit, born in the telling of stories, is what keeps them connected. You follow one poet as he travels from the island of Chios to the plains of Boeotia. His name is not recorded, but his influence will outlast empires. He carries with him a few simple tools, a lyre, a cloak, and an endless memory of verse. He believes that words are more enduring than bronze, that to sing is to build line by line a civilization of the mind. In his song, you hear more than war. You hear longing for home, for purpose, for meaning. The Greeks will call this nostos, the ache, for return a theme that will echo through their literature for centuries. For they are a people of wanderers, their lives bound to the sea, forever seeking new horizons and forever yearning for home. By the time the first great sanctuaries rise, Delphi, Olympia, Dodona, those stories have already become sacred. The gods of the epics, Zeus, Athena, Apollo, Aphrodite, are not distant beings, but mirrors of human nature, wise, jealous, loving, cruel. In them the Greeks see themselves, their flaws, their beauty, their striving for immortality through memory. The bard's song fades with the embers. He bows his head, whispering the final words. Sing, O muse of the man of many turns. A new age is dawning. The Greeks will soon rediscover the power to write, to carve their language into permanence. But even when the alphabet returns, they will never forget that their history began not with stone or ink, but with voice and fire. As you drift into sleep, you can still hear the lyre's final chord lingering in the cool night air, the sound of a people finding their soul through story. And far across the horizon, the first light of a new civilization glows faintly on the edge of the sea. From villages to city-states, morning light spills across the Aegean. You awaken to the sound of hammers and the smell of hard smoke, the scent of a people rebuilding their world. The long night of the Dark Ages has passed across the hills and islands of Greece. New settlements are rising, modest yet purposeful, bound not by the rule of kings, but by something new: community. The age of palaces and monarchs is over. In its place, the polis is being born. You walk through one of these growing towns, perhaps a young Athens or Corinth or Argos. The streets are narrow, the houses small, but there is life in every corner. Farmers bring grain and olives to the market square. Craftsmen trade pottery and bronze tools. Elders sit beneath the shade of an olive tree, settling disputes with words rather than spears. Something remarkable is happening here. These villages are not just places to live. They are becoming centers of shared identity of citizenship. People begin to see themselves not merely as members of a tribe or clan, but as part of a polis. A body of people united by customs, land and law. Each polis has its own spirit, its ethos. In Sparta, that ethos will be discipline and strength. In Athens, it will be freedom and reason. In Corinth, wealth and commerce. Each will shape the soul of Greece in its own way. You can feel the hum of cooperation and the tension of rivalry in the air. At the heart of every polis stands the agora, the gathering place. Here voices mix like currents in the sea. Merchants shout prices, poets recite verses, and citizens debate matters of the community. The Greeks are learning something revolutionary, that the spoken word logos can shape destiny. Above the town on a steep hill rises another new creation, the Acropolis. Once a refuge in times of war, it becomes a sacred place, crowned with temples and statues. From here, the gods look down upon their people, and the people look up in reverence. Religion binds them together. You watch as priests light incense before an altar, to Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. Children carry offerings. The scent of sacrifice drifts through the air. The gods are no longer distant powers. They are neighbors woven into the rhythm of the city's life. In these rituals, Greece rediscovers balance between heaven and earth, between order and freedom. Yet beyond the walls, danger still lurks. The land of Greece is rugged, carved by mountains that divide valley from valley, people from people. There is little fertile soil, few broad rivers. To survive, the Greeks must learn to trade and to sail. You follow a group of men as they push a slender wooden ship into the sea. Its single sail catches the wind, and soon it glides across the sparkling waters toward new horizons. The sea becomes a highway of connection, linking scattered communities, carrying ideas, stories, and goods. Through these journeys, the polis becomes more than the place. It becomes an idea, the belief that people, when bound by shared values, can create their own destiny. Back on land, change quickens, iron tools spread, harvests grow richer, and population rises. The isolation of the Dark Ages is gone. By 800 BC, the map of Greece begins to fill with names that will echo through history. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, Megara. Each grows from the same roots, yet each blooms in a different shape. You pass through a Spartan training ground, where boys march barefoot, learning to endure hunger and pain. Discipline is their god. In Athens, you watch craftsmen at their wheels shaping clay into delicate vessels, painted with scenes of myth and daily life. Beauty is their devotion. Different though they are, the city-states share one truth: each sees its citizens as essential to its survival. The polis is not ruled by a single king. It is sustained by the participation of its people. Still, not all are equal. Kings may be gone, but aristocrats, the land-owning elite, dominate most councils. They hold power through lineage, wealth and force. Common farmers and craftsmen have little say, and tensions begin to stir. You stand in the agora of a restless city. As murmurs rise among the crowd, the old order feels heavy, the new one uncertain. Some call for justice, others for strong leaders who can unite the people. From this struggle will come the age of lawgivers and tyrants, men who will reshape the balance of power. But that is yet to come. For now, the polis grows like a living organism, feeding on exchange, conflict and cooperation. Across the hills, festivals bloom. You see dancers circling to the sound of flutes, athletes competing in honor of the gods. The Greeks celebrate not only their deities, but themselves, their strength, their endurance, their artistry. Even in their fiercest rivalries, they share one identity. They call themselves Hellenes. Their land, Hellas. Their common tongue binds them. Their myths unite them, and their pride in human achievement sets them apart from the barbarians. Those who do not speak Greek, whose words sound like the bleating of sheep, bar bar bar. It is here in these centuries of quiet transformation that Greece becomes Greece. You stroll along the harbor at twilight. Ships rest at anchor, their sails furled, lamps flicker in the streets. The air is alive with the sound of conversation, laughter, bargaining, storytelling. It feels as though all of human life is being rehearsed here for the first time. From the ashes of forgotten kingdoms has risen a new form of order, small, fragile, yet built on something enduring, the belief that community reason and shared destiny can outlast the might of any single ruler. The polis is not just a place where people live, it is where they learn to be, to think, to act, to belong. And as you stand on a hill above the twinkling lights of a young city, you can feel history turning. The old world of kings and palaces has faded. The world of citizens, the world of Greece has begun. The night breeze carries the scent of olive and sea. Somewhere a voice calls across the harbor. You close your eyes, and the hum of the polis becomes a lullaby, the gentle heartbeat of a civilization's awakening to itself, the gift of the alphabet and the birth of literacy. Night gives way to morning, and the horizon glows like the first page of an unwritten story. You stand at the edge of a Greek harbor, where a merchant ship rocks gently in the dawn tide. On its deck are crates of purple dye, copper ingots, and scrolls from the east. And among these treasures lies something even greater, though it cannot be measured in weight or coin. It is a gift from a distant people, a gift that will change Greece forever. An alphabet, the Phoenicians, great sailors from the coasts of present-day Lebanon, have been trading across the Mediterranean for centuries. They bring not only goods, but ideas. Among them is a new way of capturing speech, a set of signs simple and powerful, each representing a sound. No longer must words depend on memory or song alone. With this, even a farmer, a potter or a sailor can learn to write. You watch as a Greek trader, perhaps on the island of Euboea, studies the marks on a Phoenician tablet. He traces them with his finger. Curious, he begins to adapt them, shaping them to fit the sounds of his own tongue. In doing so, he creates something new, something more fluid and human. From this meeting of minds, the Greek alphabet is born. Unlike the cumbersome symbols of the old Mycenaean script, this alphabet is easy to learn. It includes vowels, a, e, o, u, making it clear, musical and flexible. Within a few generations, it will spread across the Aegean, inscribed on clay pots, carved into stone and painted on temple walls. You can almost hear the whisper of chalk on a tablet, the first hesitant attempts of a student learning to write his name. What was once a world of oral memory becomes at last a world of text. The Greeks begin to write their laws, their hymns, their poetry. What was once fleeting can now endure. On a clay cup from Diplon, you glimpse the earliest written Greek words, a playful inscription, a boast about who dances best at a festival. It is a small thing, yet monumental. It means that writing is no longer the tool of kings, but of people. You wander through a marketplace where merchants mark prices, priests record offerings, and poets scratch verses onto shards of pottery. The written word is everywhere, woven into the fabric of daily life, and through it something remarkable happens. The Greeks begin to see themselves not as a scattered collection of tribes, but as a people with a shared voice. The alphabet becomes their mirror. Now stories, once passed from bard to bard, can be preserved. Somewhere a poet, perhaps called Homer, perhaps someone else, begins to shape the vast oral traditions of Greece into written form. The Iliad and the Odyssey, once carried by memory, are fixed at last in letters. You sit beneath an olive tree as a young boy reads aloud from one of these newly written lines. His voice trembles, yet the words hold power. The wrath of Achilles, the journey of Odysseus. They are no longer the property of memory alone. They belong to time. This is how a culture remembers itself. Through writing, the Greeks begin to look inward, to question, to reason, to argue. Ideas no longer vanish with the voice. They endure. They can be compared, criticized, debated. The alphabet becomes not just a tool of record, but of thought. In the temples, priests record the names of those who dedicate offerings to the gods. In the agora, merchants tally trade and craftsmen sign their work. In the home, parents teach their children letters as they would teach them prayers. And from this everyday practice arises something extraordinary: education. For the first time, learning is not the privilege of a select few. It spreads unevenly, yes, but inevitably, through the cities and islands of Greece. Knowledge begins to ripple outward, touching every layer of life. You visit a small school in a modest Athenian quarter. Children sit cross-legged, their voices murmuring the alphabet in rhythmic unison, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. They recite not just to remember, but to feel the melody of their own language. On the wall, a tablet bears the simple prayer to Hermes, patron of travelers and words. You realize that literacy itself has become a kind of religion, a belief in the power of symbols to connect people across time. Through letters, the Greeks can now record laws, history, and philosophy. They begin to define justice, debate, government, and preserve the wisdom of their thinkers. The spoken word still rules the agora, but the written word gives it permanence. You stroll past a stonemason, engraving an inscription into marble, a treaty between two city-states. The letters are straight, deliberate, beautiful. The Greeks take pride not only in what they say, but in how it looks when carved in stone. Their alphabet is both functional and artistic, a reflection of the harmony they seek in all things. And as words multiply, so too does imagination. Poets experiment with form and rhythm. Storytellers invent new myths. Philosophers begin to write their arguments instead of merely speaking them. This alphabet becomes the vessel of the Greek spirit, precise, graceful, enduring. Through it, they will give the world history, philosophy, drama, and science. It is difficult to imagine now that all of this began with trade, with a sailor's curiosity, a borrowed symbol, a desire to communicate across the sea. But that is the Greek genius, to take what is foreign and make it their own, to refine and transform until it becomes universal. You pause on a hillside as the sun dips low, turning the sky to bronze. In the distance, the faint chime of a bell marks the end of the day. Below you, a boy traces the alphabet into the sand with a stick. Letters that will one day carry the thoughts of Socrates, the dialogues of Plato, the calculations of Archimedes, and the verses of Sophocles. Each stroke is small, fragile, fleeting, yet together they will outlive empires. The alphabet had done more than restore communication. It has reawakened the human mind, and as the stars begin to bloom over the Aegean, you realize that a new light now burns in Greece, not in the hearts of kings, but in the hearts of those who have learned to write. The darkness of the past is gone. The words of the Greeks will never be lost again. The expansion across the Mediterranean. The wind smells of salt and promise. You stand upon a rocky shore, watching as Greek ships cut across the water. Sleek and slender, their sails glowing like amber in the morning sun. Each vessel carries a piece of Greece within it, jars of olive oil and wine bronze tools, woven cloth, and the most precious of all the dreams of those who seek a new life beyond the horizon. The Greek world has grown restless. By the 8th century BC, the population of many city-states has swelled. Farmland is scarce, hemmed in by mountains and dry soil. Families struggle to feed their children. Younger sons who inherit no land look toward the sea, toward lands they've heard of in stories, lands where rivers run wide and fertile plains wait untouched. And so begins the age of colonization. You follow one such expedition as it sets sail from Corinth. The crew chants prayers to Poseidon, god of the deep, as they row steadily into the open Aegean. Their leader, chosen by the oracle at Delphi, carries sacred fire from the city's heart, a symbol of their bond to home. Wherever they settle, they will light that flame anew, keeping their heritage alive even in foreign lands. Days turn into weeks. The sea shifts from blue to grey to green as the ship leaves the Aegean behind. Storms lash the deck, waves crash like thunder. But through endurance and faith, the voyagers find their destination, a gentle bay on the western coast of Italy. Here they found a new settlement, Syracuse. You walk among them as they stake their boundaries and build small huts. Smoke curls into the air as they offer thanks to the gods. This new colony is both a home and an outpost, a bridge between Greece and the wider world. Soon hundreds of such colonies will bloom like stars across the Mediterranean and the Black Sea Kyrene, in North Africa, Massalia in Gaul, Byzantium, on the Bosporus, from Spain to Egypt, from Sicily to the Crimea. Greek sailors leave their mark not through conquest, but through trade and exchange. And yet, even as they scatter, they remain bound by language, religion, and custom. In every colony, you hear familiar prayers to Athena, for wisdom to Apollo, for light to Poseidon, for safe passage. In every marketplace, you smell the same blend of olive oil, honey, and sea breeze. The colonists built temples, theaters, and agoras, small reflections of the homeland they left behind. The Greek world, once confined to a rugged peninsula, now stretches like a necklace around the seas. You see the results everywhere. The exchange of goods brings new prosperity. Corinth grows rich from pottery, Chios from wine, Athens from olive oil, Coins appear for the first time, stamped with city emblems, owls, dolphins, and gorgons. Trade brings wealth, and wealth brings competition. With each voyage, the Greeks encounter new peoples: Egyptians, Phoenicians, Etruscans, and Thracians. From them they borrow ideas and technologies, blending them into their own. The Greeks are master imitators, but what they imitate they transform. In Egypt, they study monumental architecture. In the Near East, they encounter advanced mathematics and astronomy. From the Phoenicians, they refine shipbuilding, and in every port they carried home stories and wisdom, expanding not just their markets, but their minds. You find yourself in a bustling harbor at Miletus, one of the great Ionian cities on the coast of Asia Minor. Here ideas flow as freely as goods. Philosophers begin to ask bold questions. What is the world made of? What causes the stars to move? No longer content with myth, alone they seek reason, the seeds of what will become science. From Thales to Anaximander, from the merchants' decks to the philosophers' schools, the Mediterranean becomes a web of thought. Yet colonization is not without conflict. You watch as settlers clash with native tribes in Sicily and southern Italy. The Greeks, though skilled in negotiation, can be fierce when challenged. Their new cities often displace older cultures. Their hunger for land and trade leads to rivalry. Even among themselves, the city-states begin to quarrel, each jealous of the other's success. Still, the spirit of adventure persists. The Greeks are not conquerors. By nature, they are voyagers, traders, builders of worlds. Each new colony becomes a mirror reflecting the values of its mother city, yet adapted to the rhythms of its new home. You walk through the agora of Syracuse decades later. Marble buildings now stand where huts once did. Traders from Carthage and Etruria mingle with Greek merchants. Children laugh as they play beside fountains adorned with mythic figures. The colony has become a thriving polis in its own right, independent yet unmistakably Greek. From these colonies, the world begins to see the Greeks not as isolated tribes, but as a people of immense creativity. Their art, their architecture, their language spread like pollen across the ancient world. Even their gods sail with them. In distant lands, temples rise to Apollo, and Artemis to Hera, and Dionysus, deities whose worship will soon touch every shore of the known sea. You stand at sunset on the deck of a returning ship. The sailors are older now, their faces lined with salt and wind. They speak of the lands they have seen, forests that smell of pine and rain, rivers so wide. The far bank disappears in mist cities, where foreign kings wear gold and speak in strange tongues. Yet no matter how far they go, their hearts turn homeward to Greece, for wherever they sail, they carry with them the ideals that define them: curiosity, courage, and the belief that the human spirit can thrive anywhere the sun touches the sea. The Mediterranean becomes their world, not a barrier, but a bridge, and through that bridge flows everything that will make Greece what it is destined to be: wealth, wisdom, art, and ambition. You feel the breeze cool against your face as night falls. The stars shimmer on the water, and for a moment it seems as though the sea itself is alive, each wave whispering a story, each current carrying the echoes of countless journeys. From these journeys, Greece will draw its strength. The world is vast, but the Greeks will make it feel connected, bound by language, trade, and the restless desire to explore. And from that connection will come the first stirrings of a new question: if men can build colonies across the sea, Can they not also build justice within their own cities? The waves murmur softly as you close your eyes, the ship rocking gently beneath you. Tomorrow, new lands will rise from the mist, and with them, new ideas that will shape the destiny of the West. Tyrants, lawgivers, and the rise of the citizen. The morning air over Greece carries the sound of change. The sea has made her cities rich, too rich perhaps. Trade has filled the harbors, but also widened the gap between the few who own the land and the many who till it. Across the hills of Attica, in the valleys of Argos and Corinth, farmers struggle under debts they can never repay. Some lose their land, others sell themselves or their children into bondage. The polis, once a promise of equality, begins to fracture. You walk through the agora of Athens at dawn. The merchants have not yet set up their stalls, but small knots of men already gather whispering intense voices. The words justice and freedom drift through the air like sparks. They speak of unfair taxes of nobles who hoard grain, while others starve of laws written only for the powerful. Something is building a pressure deep beneath the surface, waiting for release. It is in this turbulent age, the 7th and 6th centuries BC, that Greece finds herself standing between chaos and rebirth. The people will no longer accept the rule of kings, yet their cities are not ready for true democracy. What emerges instead is something both feared and necessary, the edge of tyrants and lawgivers. But tyrant in these early years does not mean what it will come to mean later. You meet one in Corinth, a man named Cypselus. He seizes power not by brute cruelty, but with the support of the poor, the craftsmen, and the farmers. He breaks the grip of the aristocrats, redistributes land, and invests in public works. His rule is strong, yes, but fair, and for a time, the city prospers. In Sicyon, you see the same pattern. Orthagoras, then Cleisthenes rulers who champion their people and foster art and trade. These early tyrants are in truth reformers, men who hold power with a firm hand, but who open paths that the old order had long closed. Still, their power always teeters between light and shadow, for tyranny, even when born of justice, is a dangerous cure. Not all Greeks trust in tyrants. In Sparta you find a different answer. One carved from discipline, law, and sacrifice. Here the lawgiver Lycurgus. It shapes a society unlike any other. Legend says he journeys to Delphi, seeking the wisdom of Apollo, and returns with a new constitution, the Great Rhetra. Under it, every Spartan male becomes a soldier, every woman a mother of warriors. Gold and silver are banished. Iron becomes the only currency. Children are raised by the state, trained from birth to serve the polis. You stand among them at dawn, as boys march barefoot through frost, their faces hard and proud. In Sparta, equality exists but only among warriors. Their freedom is obedience, their glory endurance. They live not for wealth or comfort, but for the preservation of their laws. The rest of Greece looks upon them with awe and unease. Sparta is both admired and feared, a city apart frozen in timeless discipline. Yet its stability, its devotion to order will allow it to endure, long after others fall. In Athens, the answer comes more gently through the wisdom of one man, Solon. You find him walking among the people listening to their grievances. The farmers respect him, the merchants trust him, even the nobles, though wary, acknowledge his fairness. In 594 BC, Solon is chosen to reform Athens. He begins by doing something radical. He forgives the debts that have enslaved the poor. He frees those sold into bondage, forbids future debt slavery, and recalls exiles. The city breathes again. Then he writes new laws, not for the few, but for all. He divides citizens into classes, not by birth, but by wealth, allowing even common men to hold public office if they meet certain means. He establishes councils, courts, and assemblies. For the first time, the voice of the people begins to echo in the halls of power. You stand among the crowd as Solon addresses them. A tall, grave figure, his words measured but firm. Equality does not mean sameness, he tells them. It means fairness, that each man bears the weight of his station, and none more than he must. His laws are recorded on wooden tablets and displayed in public, not locked away in the chambers of the elite. The alphabet, that miracle of letters, now carries the laws of Athens for all to see. It is a fragile balance. Solon knows that freedom without restraint can lead to chaos. Before leaving Athens, he warns, I have given you the best laws you are capable of receiving. Whether they endure depends on your wisdom. Then he departs traveling abroad, so that no one can pressure him to change his reforms. His words prove prophetic. Soon after, Athens falls once more into turmoil. Rival factions battle for power until a new figure emerges. Pisistratus, a clever and charismatic noble. With charm, cunning, and the support of the common people, he seizes the Acropolis and becomes tyrant of Athens. Yet unlike so many who follow the path of tyranny, Pisistratus governs with a light hand. He strengthens Solon's laws rather than abolishing them, builds temples and sponsors festivals. Under his rule, Athens blossoms. Poets, craftsmen, and thinkers find a home here. You watch as work begins on a grand temple to Athena, protector of the city. The hum of construction rises through the warm Attic air. The sound of ambition cloaked in marble, but as always the wheel of fortune turns. When Pisistratus dies, his sons inherit his power, and with it the seeds of decay. Corruption spreads. The people, once grateful, grow restless again. In time, they will overthrow the tyranny altogether, and from that struggle will emerge something unprecedented in human history, democracy. But that belongs to another dawn. For now you stand in the twilight of reform. Across Greece, the great experiment unfolds: tyranny in Corinth, laws; in Sparta, reform in Athens. Each city in its own way gropes toward balance. Each tries to define what it means to belong not as subject of a king but as citizens of a polis. The world is still fragile, but it is alive with possibility. The voices of the people are beginning to stir, to demand, to dream. You close your eyes, hearing those voices, the murmur of debate, the clash of ideas, the first uncertain notes of freedom. Tomorrow, those voices will rise louder, until even the gods must listen. Athens awakens. The city hums with anticipation. It is early morning in Athens, and golden light spills over the Acropolis, striking the marble temples with a warm glow. The streets below stir to life, merchants setting out their wares, farmers arriving with baskets of figs and olives, craftsmen opening their stalls. But beneath this familiar rhythm beats a new pulse, something that has never existed in the world before: the voice of the people. You walk through the agora and hear it everywhere, not just the clatter of trade or the recitations of poetry, but debate. Ordinary men, not nobles or priests, stand in small circles, arguing about laws, taxes, and treaties. The very idea is revolutionary, that the fate of the city should be decided by its citizens, not decreed by the few. Athens has entered a new age. The memory of tyranny still lingers. After the fall of Pisistratus' sons, the city was divided once again, rich against poor coast, against plain nobles, against commoners. It seemed Athens might collapse into endless strife, but from the turmoil rose a visionary, Cleisthenes, a nobleman, with the mind of a reformer and the courage of a dreamer. You see him standing before the Athenian assembly in 58 BC, his voice steady, as he proposes a radical reorganization of the city's life. No longer will Athens be divided by wealth or bloodline. Instead, Cleisthenes reshapes it into demesne local districts like neighborhoods, binding people of every class together. The citizens of Athens will now belong to one body, one community, and one destiny. This is the seat of democracy, Demos Kratos, the rule of the people. You watch as new councils are formed, the bull, a council of 500 citizens, chosen by lot to prepare the business of the assembly, and the ecclesia, where all free male citizens can speak a vote and decide matters of war, peace and law. In these open-air meetings, voices mingle like waves upon the shore. No one knows if it will work, yet somehow it does. The Athenians, with their boundless curiosity and fierce independence, take to democracy as naturally as to the sea. They debate with passion, vote with ceremony, and enforce their decisions with solemn pride. Each man is not just a subject of the city, he is the city. You sit amongst them as the assembly gathers on the Pnyx, a rocky hill overlooking Athens. The sun is high and the air shimmers with heat. 5,000 citizens crowd the slope, each carrying the right to speak and to decide the fate of the polis. One man steps forward, raises his thumb hand, and addresses the crowd. His words are measured, deliberate. When he finishes, another raises, countering his argument. The crowd listens, murmurs votes. There are no kings, here only persuasion, reason, and the will of the people. For the first time in history, the experiment of a collective self-rule unfolds in full daylight. But democracy is not born perfect. You walk through the narrow lanes of Athens and see those left outside its circle, women tending hearths, slaves working fields, foreigners known as metics, trading goods but denied a vote. For all its brilliance, Athenian democracy belongs only to a portion of its people. Yet even so, it is a spark that will outlast empires. The transformation is more than political, it is spiritual. The citizens begin to see participation not as a duty, but as an honor. They take pride in their laws, their freedom to speak their right to challenge even the most powerful. Ostracism, a strange and elegant safeguard, allows the people to banish anyone who threatens tyranny, not with bloodshed, but by vote. Every year, citizens gather to scratch names onto shards of pottery ostraca. If enough votes fall upon one man, he is exiled for 10 years. It is a reminder that power rests in the hands of the many, not the few. You stroll through the agora as philosophers discuss the meaning of justice and dramatists rehearse play that explore the virtues and vices of the human soul. Tragedy and comedy flourish side by side with politics, for democracy feeds not only on law, but on the imagination of its people. Art mirrors freedom. Temples rise upon the Acropolis, each a hymn in stone. The statue of Athena Promachos, the guardian of the city, gleams in the sunlight, her spear, a beacon to sailors far at sea. Her name itself becomes the soul of Athens. Wisdom guiding courage, reason, steering passion, and yet beneath the glory, tension hums. Democracy is a delicate balance always swaying between chaos and order. The people are learning how to rule themselves, but the path is unsteady. Demagogues appear, fiery speakers who stir the crowd with easy promises. The assembly can be wise one day and reckless the next. Freedom, it seems, is as demanding as tyranny ever was. Still the Athenians persevere. You meet an old potter by his wheel, who says a man's worth is not in the land he owns, but in the voice he has. A fisherman by the docks adds, the sea belongs to all, so should our city. Their words are humble, but they contain a truth larger than any temple. Across the Aegean, other city-states watch with fascination and suspicion. Some, like Argos and Megara, experiment with their own forms of government. Others, like Sparta, dismiss democracy as dangerous folly, a breeding ground for weakness and dissent. But the idea cannot be unlearned. Athens, in its daring, has invented something eternal, the belief that ordinary men can shape their destiny through reasoned speech and shared purpose. It is messy, imperfect, and vulnerable, but it is alive. As the sun sets over the Pnyx, casting long shadows across the city, you feel a stillness settle over the land. The people begin to disperse. Their votes cast, their voices spent. In their wake, Athens glows softly in the twilight, the heart of a new kind of world. The experiment will face many tests, war plague, corruption, but its light will endure. It will be carried far beyond these hills, through Rome and the Renaissance, through revolutions and republics yet unborn. But for now, you rest upon the hillside, listening to the hum of a city that has just discovered itself, a city that has learned at last to speak in one voice. And as night gathers over the Parthenon's foundations, a soft breeze passes through the olive groves, whispering the name that will echo through history. Athens. The Persian Wars, Greece united in fire. The dawn is quiet, too quiet for what is coming. You stand on a hillside overlooking the Aegean, the scent of salt and pine heavy in the air. Far beyond the horizon lies Persia, a vast empire that stretches from India to the Mediterranean, ruled by kings who command millions. Its armies march with iron discipline, its cities gleam with wealth and power. To the east, the great king stirs, and his gaze has fallen upon Greece. The Greeks, fractured and quarrelsome, are not ready. Their cities fight as often with each other as with their enemies. Yet destiny has a way of testing those who least expect it. The storm begins in 490 BC. You follow Darius, the Persian king, as his armies cross the sea to punish Athens for supporting a rebellion in distant Ionia. The Persians sweep across the islands like fire until they land upon the plains of Marathon. The Athenian army gathers there, led by Miltiades. They are farmers, potters, and merchants turned soldiers, outnumbered 10 to 1. The Persians wait confident of victory. You walk among the Greeks as they prepared their shields, their faces calm but resolute. Then at dawn, the Athenians do the unthinkable, they charge. You hear the thunder of sandals on the earth, the clash of bronze and iron. The Persians falter, astonished by the ferocity of the attack. Within hours, the invincible army of the East is broken. The Persians flee to their ships, leaving the beach strewn with their dead. Marathon becomes a miracle, the moment a small city defies an empire. You stand upon that blood-soaked plain. At sunset, the wind carries the scent of victory and the whisper of something greater, unity. The Greeks, divided by rivalries, have proven they can stand together if only for survival. But Persia is not done. 10 years later, the horizon darkens again. Darius is dead, but his son, Xerxes Vast, in ambition seeks vengeance. He gathers the greatest army the world has ever seen. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers from every corner of his empire. Across the Hellespont they march, upon a bridge of boats that groans under their weight. You can almost feel the tremor of their steps as they enter Greece. In this moment of peril, the cities of Greece send envoys to one another. For once, even Athens and Sparta speak as brothers. They form the Hellenic League, swearing to fight as one. Yet unity is fragile, born of necessity and fear. At the narrow pass of Thermopylae, you find them waiting. The Persians come in waves, their banners fluttering like storm clouds, and there, holding the line, stand 300 Spartans under their king Leonidas. Around them gather allies from other cities, forming a wall of shields in the narrow defile between mountain and sea. For 3 days they fight like lions. You hear the ring of spear on shield, the cries of men who know they cannot win but refuse to yield. When at last the Persians find a hidden path and surround them, Leonidas and his warriors stand their ground, their deaths by Greece time. You watch the smoke rise over Thermopylae and feel both sorrow and awe. The Spartans' courage becomes legend proof that freedom can outshine fear. Meanwhile, Athens faces its own fate. The Persians march south, burning cities in their path. The Athenians evacuate their people to the island of Salamis, leaving their city to the flames. The smoke of the burning Acropolis curls into the sky, a vision of loss and defiance. But Themistocles, cunning and brilliant, has a plan. He gathers the Greek fleet in the narrow straits between Salamis and the mainland. The Persians, confident and vast, crowd their ships into the passage. You stand upon a rocky promontory and watch as the trap closes. The Greeks strike first swift and precise. Their smaller, nimbler ships ram at the Persian vessels, splintering their hulls. The sea becomes a chaos of oars, screams, and shattered timber. Xerxes, watching from his golden throne on the cliffs, sees his mighty armada crumble before him. When the sun sets, the Persian fleet is broken. The waters of Salamis glow with fire and defeat. A year later, at Plataea, the Greek hoplites march one final time, driving the last of the Persian invaders from their soil. The empire of Asia retreats. The cities of Greece stand free. You walk among the weary victors, Spartans, Athenians, Corinthians, all brothers, now in triumph. The gods, they say, have favored the brave, but it is more than divine favor. It is the birth of a new idea, that free men fighting for their homes and their freedom can overcome the might of kings. In the aftermath, Greece stands transformed. The old rivalries seem for a moment forgotten. Festivals celebrate the fallen. Poets sing of courage and sacrifice. Herodotus, the father of history, will one day tell this tale not merely as a chronicle of war, but as a lesson in human endurance. You stand on the Acropolis as it is, rebuilt stone by shining stone. The scars of invasion are still visible, yet beneath them lies strength, the knowledge that even in ruin, Greece endured. The Persian Wars will become more than victories of arms. They will become victories of spirit. They will teach the Greeks that freedom is worth any price, and that their unity, however fleeting, can change the course of the world. You look out across the sea that once carried the invader, and now lies calm beneath the stars. Somewhere a flute plays a song for the dead, a hymn for the living. The fires of war are cooling, but from their ashes will rise something greater, still the golden age of Athens. For now, though, the night is quiet once more. The air smells of salt, ash, and peace. The warriors sleep, and the world waits to see what Greece will do with its newfound power. The golden age of Athens, art taught, and Pericles' dream. The fires of war have faded, and in their place rises something radiant. You awaken to the hum of a city reborn. Athens gleaming in the morning sun. The air smells of marble dust and olive oil. The streets are alive with builders, poets, and philosophers. After decades of fear and bloodshed, peace has returned, and from that peace emerges a miracle, the Golden Age. You wander through the agora, the beating heart of Athens. The stalls overflow with the fruit fish, pottery, and linen. Citizens greet one another with laughter, sailors boast of voyages, Artisans shape clay into beauty. The city pulses with confidence, not the pride of conquest, but the deeper pride of achievement. At its center stands one man, whose vision will define an era, Pericles. He is tall, eloquent, and measured, a leader who speaks softly, but commands the hearts of the people. Under his guidance, Athens becomes not merely a city, but a symbol of human potential. We are the school of Hellas, he declares, and every craftsman, thinker, and citizen takes those words to heart. You follow Pericles up the slopes of the Acropolis, where dust and sunlight mingle as hundreds of workers labor to raise new temples, there in gleaming marble Athens. Thanks her goddess for deliverance, Athena, protector of wisdom and war, whose calm eyes seem to gaze across the ages. The Parthenon rises from the rock, like a hymn carved in stone. Columns soar toward the sky, perfectly balanced, every curve measured with mathematical grace. Inside the sculptor, Phidias fashions a statue of Athena, herself gold and ivory, radiant and serene. The city's devotion takes tangible form, faith transfigured into beauty. You stand among the builders and feel the energy that defines this age, not the restless striving of survival, but the quiet confidence of mastery. The Athenians are now the artists of civilization. Everywhere art blooms. Vase painters depict scenes from daily life and myth with astonishing realism. The dramatists Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides turn ancient legends into mirrors of the human soul. In their plays, heroes fall, not because of monsters or gods, but because of pride, ambition, or love. The theater becomes both temple and classroom, a place where citizens gather to see themselves reflected upon the stage. You take your seat in the great open air, theater of Dionysus, as sunlight warms the marble tiers. The chorus enters chanting in rhythmic verse. The story unfolds a tragedy of kings and fate, and you feel the collective heartbeat of a people who have learned that wisdom often comes only through suffering. In the evenings, the philosophers gather in shaded courtyards, questioning everything. An old man named Socrates walks barefoot through the streets, speaking with cobblers and soldiers alike, asking them, what is virtue? What is justice? He teaches not by lecture but by dialogue, by leading others to discover the truth within themselves. Athens, under Pericles, becomes a sanctuary of thought. Logic and beauty intertwine, geometry and music, politics and poetry, all meet in the same quest to understand what it means to be human. You stroll through the academy gardens, where Plato will one day teach, though that is still to come. For now knowledge is everywhere, in sculpture, in verse, in the measured debates of the assembly. The democracy flourished. Citizens gather on the Pnyx to decide matters of war, law and trade. The voice of the people, once a whisper, now shapes the destiny of the city. Pericles, though a statesman of immense influence, never rules as a king. His power rests on persuasion, on the trust of a people who have come to believe that freedom and art, like reason and faith, belong together, yet prosperity has its shadows. You walk through the port of Piraeus, where ships from across the Aegean unload their cargoes, grain from Egypt, timber from Macedonia, silver from Thrace. Wealth flows into Athens, but it brings envy with it. Other city-states grow weary. The Delian League, founded as an alliance against Persia, has become an Athenian empire in all but name. The tribute once paid for defense now funds the splendor of the Acropolis. You can feel the tension in the air, faint but growing whispers that Athens has become what she once defied, proud, domineering, certain of her superiority. Still, for now, the dream holds. As twilight falls, you walk along the long walls that stretch from the city to the sea, a gleaming corridor of stone that connects Athens to her harbor, ensuring that no siege can starve her people. The lamps flicker along its length like stars fallen to earth. In the distance, you hear the laughter of youths practicing music in the gymnasia, the rhythm of hammers from the shipyards, the murmur of poets reciting verses in the taverns. Every corner of Athens hums with the pulse of creation. You pause upon a terrace overlooking the city. The Parthenon glows golden in the fading light, and beyond it, the Aegean stretches endlessly, calm and infinite. You realize that what shines here is not merely marble, but the human spirit itself, the conviction that beauty, knowledge, and freedom can coexist. Under Pericles, Athens reaches for immortality, not through empire or war, but through art, thought, and the elevation of the soul. And though centuries will crumble these temples, though winds and time will wear away their stones, the idea they embody will endure. That greatness lies not in conquest, but in creation. The night descends slowly, washing the marble in silver light. The air is thick with the scent of myrtle and incense from the altars. Somewhere a flute plays soft, tender, eternal. You close your eyes, feeling the warmth of the city that dared to dream. Athens, the light of the ancient world, burns brightly beneath the stars, unaware that the shadows of rivalry and war are already gathering on the horizon. But that is for another dawn. Tonight she glows with unmatched brilliance, the heart of a civilization that taught the world to think, to build, and to believe. The Peloponnesian war brother against brother. The marble city gleams in the morning sun, but the air feels heavier now, filled with rumor, tension, and pride. Beneath the shining temples and crowded markets of Athens, something uneasy stirs. The same ambition that built the Parthenon is about to set all of Greece ablaze. You walk through the agora and hear the whispers. Sparta is watching. Corinth is angry. The allies of Athens, bound by tribute and fear, grumble under the weight of her empire. Across the Aegean embassies travel back and forth, each seeking peace, each preparing for war. It is the year 431 BC, and the long harmony, born after the Persian Wars, has begun to crack. At the heart of it lies the rivalry between two great powers, Athens and Sparta. They could not be more different. Athens is a city of open air and open speech, rich from trade and empire. Sparta is closet, austere, ruled by discipline and silence. One worships freedom, the other order. Together they had stood against Persia. But now, with no common enemy, their differences turn to hostility. You stand in the Athenian assembly as the debate rages. The old men call for restraint. The younger citizens, drunk on confidence, demand action. We cannot be seen to bow to Sparta, cries one voice. Others warn that war will destroy what Athens has built. Pericles rises calm, solemn his words, as measured as a sculptor's touch. We must endure, he says. We fight not for conquest, but for freedom, for the right to live as we choose. His voice carries over the crowd like a wind through the olive trees. The vote is taken. The war begins. It will last for nearly 30 years. The first blows fall quickly. Spartan armies march into Attica, burning the fields, tearing down vineyards, leaving only ash. But Athens, protected by her walls, refuses to meet them in open battle. Pericles' plan is simple: rely on the navy, control the sea, and outlast the enemy. You climb the long walls as refugees pour in from the countryside, families with carts of grain, goats, and frightened children. Within the city's stone embrace the population swells, and the air grows thick. Then, as though fate itself takes sides, plague strikes. You can hear the coughing in the narrow streets, see the bodies carried through the gates at dawn. The pestilence spares no one rich or poor citizen or slave. The temples overflow with prayers that go unanswered. And one day, Pericles himself falls ill. You stand among the mourners as they carry his bier through the silent city. The man who built Athens into the jewel of the world lies still, his dream slipping away into smoke. After his death, the city wavers. Leaders come and go, some noble, others reckless. The war grows uglier. Athens attacks the island of Melos, massacring its men and enslaving its women. Sparta allies with Persia, the very empire Greece once defied. Brother turns upon brother. Reason gives way to hunger and hate. You sail with the Athenian fleet to Sicily, where ambition has drowned out caution. The city has decided to strike Syracuse, a distant colony, in search of glory. The harbor there gleams beneath a Sicilian sun, but it will soon be a graveyard. The expedition falters. Ships burn, men drown, and the survivors are chained and forced to labor in quarries under the relentless sun. The dream of the empire is broken. Back in Athens, the news arrives like thunder. The people wail in the streets. The assembly falls into chaos. There are coups, purges, fleeting tyrannies. The city that once gave birth to democracy begins to devour itself. Meanwhile, Sparta tightens its grip. Under the command of Lysander, its navy, now funded by Persian gold, meets the Athenian fleet at Aegospotami. You watch from the shore as the battle begins and ends in a single tragic hour. The Athenian ships are trapped, destroyed, burned. Athens, starved and defeated, can hold out no longer. You stand upon the Acropolis in 404 BC as the Spartan troops march through the gates. The city that once ruled the seas now lies in ruin. Her walls are torn down, her allies scattered, her people hollowed by grief. Yet even in defeat, something within her remains unbroken. Lysander orders the Athenian navy destroyed, but he spares the Parthenon. The gods, he says, should not be punished for the sins of men. And so the temples still gleam in the sun, silent witnesses to the rise and fall of human pride. The war has changed Greece forever. Sparta stands triumphant, but her triumph is short-lived. The rigid discipline that once made her strong begins to crack under the weight of victory. She rules Greece not through unity, but through fear. Other city-states, Thebes, Corinth, Argos soon rise in rebellion. The land that once defeated Persia now devours itself. You walk across the battlefields that stretch from Boeotia to the Peloponnese. The air smells of ash and olive leaves. The fields that once fed nations lie barren. The poets no longer sing of glory but of loss. Yet even in ruin, Greece does not die. From her suffering will come reflection, and from reflection wisdom. The philosophers who wander her broken cities, Plato, Xenophon, Aristotle will ask why men destroy what they love, why ambition always outpaces wisdom, why the greatest civilizations fall not from foreign conquest, but from their own hands. For now, though, the night settles heavily upon the land. The age of heroes and builders has passed. The age of thinkers has begun. You stand once more upon the empty Nix, the platform where the voice of the people once thundered. The city below glows faintly under a pale moon, quiet, humbled, but still beautiful. The sea beyond is calm, as though mourning in silence. And in that silence you hear something faint, not despair, but endurance. The Athenians battered, and grieving will rise again in time. They will rebuild their schools, their theaters, their dreams. They will remember that even in failure, the pursuit of wisdom endures. As you close your eyes, the breeze from the Saronic Gulf carries the scent of salt and myrtle. Somewhere in the distance, a nightingale sings, "The war is over." But the story of Greece' wounded wise immortal continues. The age of philosophers, Socrates, Plato and Aristotle. The echoes of war have quieted, but the questions remain. You stand on a quiet Athenian street in the years after the Peloponnesian War. The city is humbled, its empire gone, its glory redeemed. Yet in the stillness, a deeper brilliance begins to stir. The walls may be broken, the treasury empty, but Athens still possesses the one thing no army can take: the human mind. This is the dawn of philosophy. You wander into the agora, where a small crowd has gathered around an old man with bare feet and a torn cloak. His eyes are sharp, filled with mischief and wisdom. He is asking questions, questions so simple they unsettle everyone who hears them. What is justice? He asks a soldier. What is courage? He asks a merchant. What is virtue? He asks a priest. When they answer, he only smiles gently and asks again, "But is that truly so?" His name is Socrates. He writes nothing. He claims to know nothing. Yet, through his relentless questioning, his elenchus, the art of dialogue, he teaches men to think, to doubt, to strip away illusion until only truth remains. You watch as he moves through the market surrounded by the youth of Athens. Among them, a thoughtful young man named Plato. To some, Socrates is a nuisance, to others a prophet, to all he is a mirror, forcing them to confront what they believe and why. In an age of uncertainty, his words are both balm and blade, but Athens, still scarred from defeat and desperate for stability, grows weary of his probing. They accuse him of corrupting the youth, of mocking the gods. You stand among the crowd in 399 BC as he faces his accusers in the court. He speaks calmly, refusing to beg for mercy. The unexamined life, he says, is not worth living. The verdict is death. You follow him to the prison, where he drinks the cup of hemlock. His friends weep, but Socrates smiles. "Do not grieve," he tells them. "To die is perhaps to awaken." His body falls still, but his spirit, his way of questioning, will haunt the world forever. Years later, his pupil Plato will take up the torch. You find Plato in a garden, outside the city, teaching under the shade of olive trees. Around him, students debate the nature of truth, justice, and beauty. This is the academy, the first great school of philosophy, where minds are sharpened, like blades. Plato believes that beyond the world of appearances lies a higher reality, the realm of forms perfect and eternal. To him, the thing we see, the table, the tree, the body are but shadows of ideal truths, justice, goodness, beauty. These are not opinions, but realities of the soul glimpsed through reason. In his dialogues, Plato immortalized his stature. Socrates lives again in words, asking questions that pierce the heart of human existence. You read The Republic, his masterpiece, a vision of a just society, ruled not by wealth or birth, but by wisdom. In it he describes a parable: prisoners, chained in a cave, mistaking shadows on the wall for reality. Only when one escapes and sees the sun does he understand the truth. It is the story of all humankind, our endless journey from ignorance to understanding. From Plato's academy will emerge another student, keen-eyed, restless, more practical than his master. His name is Aristotle. You follow him north to Macedonia, where he studies the world, not through dream or parable, but through observation. He dissects plants, classifies animals, measures the stars. To Aristotle, knowledge begins not with ideals, but with experience. We must trust our senses, he says, for they are the windows to truth. Where Plato seeks perfection, Aristotle seeks pattern. He will become the father of logic, biology, and physics, the man who gives thought structure, who teaches that even wonder must have form. You watch as he returns to Athens to found his own school, the Lyceum. Its colonnades ring with the footsteps of students discussing politics, ethics, and the nature of being. Aristotle walks as he teaches his robes, brushing the stone floor, his words weaving a web that connects every field of human inquiry. He studies governments and concludes that the best system is one that balances the few, and the many monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. He examines morality and declares that virtue lies not in extremes, but in the golden mean courage between cowardice and recklessness, generosity between greed and waste. From Socrates' questions, Plato's ideals, and Aristotle's logic, the Western mind takes shape. You stroll through Athens at twilight, hearing their legacy in every voice that argues in the agora, every student who lifts a stylus to record a thought. The Parthenon still glows above the city, but its stones are now less important than the invisible architecture rising in the minds of men. Greece, once defined by war and empire, now becomes a civilization of ideas. Philosophy seeps into every corner of life. The sculptor studies anatomy. The physician observes cause and effect. The statesman learns to reason. Knowledge itself becomes sacred, a new form of worship. Where the altar is the human mind, you pass a young man sitting beside a fountain, reading aloud from a scroll. His voice trembles as he recites Aristotle's words. All men by nature desire to know. The phrase echoes in the gathering dusk like a prayer, and you realize this too is a kind of immortality. The philosophers have taught Greece how to live beyond its ruins, to replace conquest with curiosity, glory with wisdom. Their thoughts will sail across time like ships upon the Aegean, carrying reason into every future shore. The world they leave behind will never again see them. Socrates with his questions, Plato with his ideals, Aristotle with his system, yet their voices will never fade, for in every mind that seeks truth they still walk, still teach, still ask. As night settles over the Lyceum, the sound of sandals fades, replaced by the rustling of olive leaves. The stars emerge, one by one, like sparks of thought, across the sky. You lie back upon the grass and gaze upward, feeling the quiet weight of eternity. The wars are over, the empires forgotten, but the search for wisdom has only just begun. Macedonia rises Philip Leca, and the shadow of empire. The city-states of Greece have grown weary. You stand among their ruins, not of stone but of unity. Athens, though reborn in spirit, no longer commands the seas. Sparta, once the model of strength, is hollowed by victory. Thebes rises briefly, then falters. Decades of rivalry have left the Greek world fragmented, brilliant but brittle, and beyond their mountains a new power stirs. In the wild wind-swept north lies Macedonia, a land of rugged hills and hardy people. To the southern Greeks, they are half barbarians, herdsmen and hunters, not philosophers or artists. Yet from this rough soil, destiny is taking root. You ride along the plains near Pella, where a young man surveys his kingdom. His name is Philip, son of Amyntas, a prince raised amid intrigue and invasion. In his youth he was held hostage in Thebes, where he studied the Greek art of war under Epaminondas, the master strategist who once humbled Sparta. From those years, Philip learns not only tactics but vision. When he returns to Macedonia, his country is fractured, beset by enemies on all sides. But Philip is no ordinary ruler. He rebuilds his army, forging a weapon the Greeks have never seen: the Macedonian phalanx. You watch as his soldiers train upon the open field. Each carries a sarissa, a pike twice the length of the Greek spear, so long it bristles like a living wall. When they march, Their armor gleams like a single moving creature. Impenetrable, disciplined, unstoppable. Philip unites his nobles with diplomacy, his enemies with conquest. One by one, the tribes of Macedonia bend the knee. Then he turns his gaze south. The Greeks, divided and suspicious, pay him little heed at first. To them Philip is a northern warlord, meddling in affairs of true civilization. But his power grows swiftly. He plays city against city, ally against ally, weaving a web of influence across the peninsula. You attend the council at Delphi, where Athens debates whether to act. The old voices argue, some call for peace, others for preemptive war. Demosthenes, the great orator, warns them, "Do you not see that Philip marches while you talk?" But his warnings fall upon weary ears. The Greek spirit, once unbreakable, is dulled by endless quarrel. Meanwhile, Philip moves like a shadow. He defeats the Illyrians in the west, the Thracians in the east, and the Phocians to the south. His army becomes an instrument of genius, flexible, fierce, and loyal. His statesmanship matches his sword. He marries alliances as easily as he wins battles, each union expanding his reach. By 338 BC, the inevitable comes to pass. The Greek cities, roused at last by fear, unite under Athens and Thebes to face him at Chaeronea. You stand upon the battlefield as the armies arrayed themselves in the morning mist. The Greeks, proud and desperate, hold the line, but Philip has one last advantage, his 17-year-old son Alexander. The boy commands the Macedonian cavalry on the right flank. When the moment comes, Philip feigns retreat, drawing the Athenian center forward. Then, like lightning, Alexander strikes a furious charge that cuts through the Theban sacred band, shattering the Greek line. The day belongs to Macedonia. You walk among the fallen. As dusk descends, citizens, poets, farmers, soldiers, all lying side by side. Greece has not been conquered by a foreigner, but by one of its own blood. Philip does not raise their cities. Instead, he summons their leaders and speaks of unity. Enough of fratricide, he says. Let Greece stand together, not against itself, but against the barbarian East. And so at Corinth, the city-states form a new alliance, the League of Corinth. Philip is declared hegemon, leader of all Greece, master of the armies that will march against Persia. You can feel the weight of history turning. For the first time, Greece is united, not by shared will, but by necessity, by fatigue, by the irresistible charisma of a man who has turned chaos into order. Yet even as he achieves his dream, the shadows lengthen. You find Philip at a festival in Aegae, celebrating the marriage of his daughter. The air is thick with incense and music, laughter and wine. But as he walks between the cheering crowds, a single assassin steps forward. The blade flashes. Philip falls before his people, the conqueror, undone, not by armies, but by intrigue, by the same unpredictable fate that has haunted every Greek hero since Homer's age. The crowd erupts in chaos. The body of the king is carried away, and from the shadows emerges his son Alexander. He's only 20, but already the fire of his destiny burns brighter than his father's. The generals murmur, the nobles conspire, yet Alexander wastes no time. In a storm of resolve, he crashes descent, secures the throne and takes up his father's mantle. You stand beside him as he gazes eastward, across the Aegean. The world beyond, Persia, Egypt, India, stretches like a challenge. Behind him lies a Greece exhausted but united. Before him lies the greatest empire on earth. He speaks softly, almost to himself. My father prepared the road. I will walk it to the ends of the earth. And so as night descends over Pella, the torches of the Macedonian army flicker in the darkness. They do not yet know that they are about to march into legend. that within a decade their young king will make the name Alexander echo through every corner of the world. But for now, the night is quiet. The wind drifts through the Macedonian hills, carrying the scent of pine and rain. Somewhere an owl hoots Athena's bird, the silent witness of history. The age of city-states has ended. The age of empires has begun. Alexander the Great, the dream of a conquest. The air of Macedonia is cool and sharp. The scent of pine and iron, mingling in the morning light. You stand among thousands of soldiers, gathered before a young king, a man whose gaze burns, with a purpose too vast for one lifetime. His name is Alexander. The crown rests lightly on his brow, but the weight he carries is immense. The dream of his father, the unity of Greece, and the impossible ambition to conquer the world. He is barely 20, yet his presence commands every heart. When he speaks, his voice cuts through the calm like a blade. We will carry Greek freedom to Asia, he declares. But beneath those words lies something grander, more dangerous, a hunger not just to defeat Persia, but to surpass all who came before. You follow him as the army crosses the Hellespont in 334 BC. The waters shimmer beneath their ships like molten glass. When Alexander steps onto Asian soil, he hurls a spear into the earth and proclaims it his first conquest. The gods, it seems, are listening. The first test comes swiftly, the Battle of the Granicus. You watch from the hillside as Alexander leads his cavalry straight into the Persian ranks. The sun flashes on his armor, and for a moment he seems more like a figure from myth than a man Achilles reborn. His companions fight beside him, loyal beyond question, their lances gleaming like rays of light. The Persian satraps fall one after another. The river runs red, and the way into Asia Minor lies open. Victory follows victory. Sardis, Ephesus, Halicarnassus. Cities bow before him. He frees the Greek colonies, but each triumph feeds his fire. He does not pause to rest. His eyes are fixed eastward, always eastward. Then comes Issus, where the great king Darius himself leads an army, vast as the sea. You stand upon the ridge as dust, clouds rise, blotting out the sun. Against overwhelming numbers, Alexander leads a bold charge straight at Darius's chariot. The Persian lines break. Darius flees, leaving behind his family, his treasures, and his pride. That night, Alexander enters the royal tent. Before him lie the silks, the gold, the perfumes of an empire. Yet he touches none of it. He sends Darius's mother and daughters away unharmed, saying, "You shall find in me not an enemy but a son." It is both magnanimity and message. He is no mere conqueror. He is a king of kings. You follow him south to Egypt, where the people welcome him as a liberator. On the banks of the Nile, he gazes across the desert and chooses a site for a new city, Alexandria. He marks its boundaries in the sand, envisioning a port that will one day become the heart of the ancient world, where Greek thought will mingle with Egyptian mystery. Then, as if seeking confirmation from the heavens themselves, he rides into the vast Sahara, to the oracle of Siwa. For days, he marches through blinding heat, guided only by faith and the stars. When he arrives, the priests greet him, not as a man, but as the son of Ammon Zeus. When he emerges, his face is serene, his eyes change. He no longer sees himself merely as king of Macedon or leader of Greeks, but as something greater, chosen by the gods, bound to destiny. Now he turns toward the heart of Persia. At Gaugamela in 331 BC, the great king Darius has raised one last colossal army, hundreds of thousands of men, chariots fitted with scythes, elephants armored for war. The plain stretches endlessly under the burning sun. You stand among Alexander's troops as he surveys the field. His strategy is flawless. When the battle begins, his phalanx holds firm, his cavalry sweeps wide, and he waits for the perfect moment. Then he strikes. Once again, he drives straight for Darius. The Persian king, terrified, flees a second time. The empire collapses like a temple struck by lightning. Alexander enters Babylon in triumph, the torches of his procession flickering against golden walls. The people kneel before him, showering petals at his feet. In Persepolis, he gazes upon the great palace of Xerxes, the symbol of Persian pride, and in a moment of both fury and intoxication, he sets it aflame. Flames leap into the night, devouring centuries of power. Some say he regrets it, others say it was fate. He is only 25, and yet, even as he rules from the Indus to the Nile, his restlessness deepens. He adopts Persian dress, Persian customs. He marries Roxana, a princess of Bactria. His generals grumble, is their king still Greek? But Alexander dreams of a greater union, a fusion of East and West, of cultures and gods. He leads his army farther east across deserts and mountains no Greek has ever seen. In India he faces King Porus at the Hydaspes river. The monsoon rains turn the field to mud. The elephants roar like thunder. The battle is fierce, but Alexander wins again. When Porus is brought before him, the king asks how he wishes to be treated. Porus answers proudly, "Like a king." Alexander smiles, "So you shall be." But even victory begins to taste like weariness. You see it in his eyes, that subtle loneliness of men who have no equal. His soldiers, worn by endless marching, begin to murmur. When he announces his intention to cross the Ganges, they refuse. There are no more worlds to conquer. They tell him, "Let us go home." For the first time, Alexander yields. The long march back is cruel. Across the Gedrosian desert, the sun scorches the men to madness. Thousands die. By the time they reach Babylon, Alexander is a ghost of his former self, brilliant still but haunted. Then one night in 323 BC fever strikes him. He lies in his palace unable to speak, his generals weeping at his bedside. Someone asks, "To whom do you leave your empire?" He whispers, barely audible to the strongest. You watch the torches burn low as his breath fades. He dies at 32. Outside Babylon is silent. The greatest conqueror the world has ever known lies still, but his dream, the dream of unity, of a world bound by courage and curiosity, will outlive him. His generals will divide his empire, and his cities will crumble in time. Yet the culture he spread, Greek, language, art, science, and thought, will take root from Egypt to India. You step out beneath the Babylonians. Stars, feeling the hush of eternity, settle over the world. The winds of conquest have ceased, but the light of Greece now burns in the thousand lands, carried by the echo of one man's impossible vision. The dream of Alexander, the dream of a world made one, endures, glimmering like starlight on the edge of history. The fall of Alexander and the fractured legacy. The great palace in Babylon lies in silence. The torches flicker, their flames bending low as though mourning. You stand among the marble columns where moments ago the air still carried the breath of a god. Now it carries only whispers, the echo of disbelief. Alexander is dead. He was 32, the master of the known world, the breaker of empires. His soldiers had followed him across deserts and mountains, through dust storms and battles, believing him invincible. Yet here in this quiet room, death has found him, as it finds all men. You can almost hear the hush that settles over Babylon, a silence heavier than grief filled with fear. For Alexander left no clear heir. His infant son, born of Roxana, is too young. His generals, fierce and ambitious, are too proud to bow to one another. The empire that stretched from the Aegean to the Indus trembles on the edge of chaos. Outside the palace, the streets are crowded. Macedonian soldiers beat their breasts. Persians wail in mourning. Priests chant prayers to gods, both Greek and foreign. Alexander, who once dreamed of uniting all peoples, is mourned by them all, yet none knows what his death will bring. The generals gather in secret the Diadochi, the successors. Around a long table they spread the map of Alexander's empire, its lines drawn in red ink. Babylon glows outside the windows, but their eyes are on the parchment on power. Perdiccas, the loyal regent, claims the guardianship of the infant king. Ptolemy, cunning and watchful, demands Egypt. Antigonus eyes Asia, Seleucus, the east, Lysimachus, the north. One by one they stake their claims, each promising to uphold unity, while quietly sharpening their daggers. You sense it instantly, the dream is unraveling. The funeral procession becomes a battleground. The body of Alexander, meant to be carried back to Macedonia, is seized by Ptolemy and taken instead to Egypt. He builds for his fallen king a golden sarcophagus and places it in the new city of Alexandria. There beneath a shining dome, Alexander's body will rest, a relic of divinity, a lure for pilgrims and conquerors alike. But peace will not rest beside him. Within months, the empire fractures. Armies that once marched together now turn their spears upon one another. The wars of the successors consume the world like wildfire. Perdiccas falls first, cut down by his own men. Antigonus rises, declaring himself king. The others follow suit. You travel through this new broken world. In Asia, minor banners of different colors ripple across the same horizon. Macedonian sunbursts, Persian lions, Egyptian falcons. Cities that once cheered Alexander's name now echo with the clash of foreign tongues and mercenaries' boats. In Babylon, the temples crumble. In Persepolis, weeds sprout between the charred stones of the palace Alexander burned. In India, Greek garrisons hold on like ghosts at the edge of the world, surrounded by peoples who have already begun to forget their conqueror's name. And yet, even as his empire dies, his influence grows. You enter a library in the new city of Alexandria. The air smells of papyrus and ink. Scholars from every land, Greek, Egyptian, Persian, Hebrew, sit side by side, copying, translating, arguing. Here knowledge itself becomes empire. Philosophy and science flourish, carried on by those who inherited not his throne, but his curiosity. In Syria, the Seleucid kings built cities modeled after Athens. In Egypt, Ptolemy's dynasty rules for centuries, blending Greek reason with the mysticism of the Nile. Cleopatra, the last of their line, will one day speak both languages, the final echo of a dream that once sought to unite East and West. In Greece, the old city-states watch with awe and envy. Their freedom, once the pride of a world, is now a memory. But through art, theater, and learning, they preserve their soul. From Athens to Rhodes, scholars teach the words of Plato, the logic of Aristotle, the courage of Homer's heroes, the Greek spirit, restless questioning. Luminous refuses to die. You travel once more to Babylon. Years after the conqueror's death, the palace is quiet, its gardens overgrown. The air hums with heat. Beneath the archways, you find a faded inscription, in Greek, Alexander, son of Zeus Ammon. Time has softened the letters, but their power remains. You can almost hear his voice, that youthful certainty, that unyielding will. He sought to bind the world together under one vision, to make all peoples equal in destiny. Yet in his pursuit of immortality, he became a mortal symbol of its futility. And still the dream endures. You stand beneath the endless desert sky, where the stars blaze like silver coins scattered across black velvet. Somewhere out there beyond time, Alexander's name still drifts whispered by poets, painted on maps, etched in the memory of every explorer who has ever gazed at a distant horizon and thought there must be more. For Greece, his fall marks both an ending and a beginning. The classical age is over. In its place rises the Hellenistic world, a vast mosaic of cultures, joined by the Greek tongue, by art, by philosophy. From the ruins of empire grows a new kind of greatness, not of conquest, but of connection. You walk through a bustling marketplace in Alexandria centuries later. Traders call out in Greek, Egyptian, and the Aramaic. Statues of Zeus stand beside images of Isis. The air is thick with spices, voices, and ideas. This is Alexander's legacy, not his wars, but his bridges. He set out to conquer the world, and instead he changed it. When you close your eyes, you can still see him riding at the head of his army beneath a blazing sun, his cloak snapping in the wind, his eyes fixed on some unreachable horizon. Around him the banners of Greece ripple in the desert heat. He is not merely a king or a conqueror. He is the embodiment of a question that has haunted humankind since the dawn of thought. How far can we go? The answer, as Greece has shown, lies not in empire, but in legacy, in the pursuit of knowledge, beauty and truth that outlives every crown. And so, as the night deepens, you let the centuries fold around you, from the ruins of Thebes to the libraries of Alexandria, from the fire of Troy to the marble of Athens. The winds of history sigh softly through time, whispering the same eternal refrain: empires rise, kings fall, but ideas endure.